Shalom, and happy Chanukah. Dream, dream, dream. As we've learned, this month of Kislev is the month of dreaming. And it was Yosef's dreams, which his brothers found so alienating and so threatening, that wound him up in Egypt in the first place. And as this week's portion of Miketz opens, it's Pharaoh who's dreaming, and Yosef is in prison, although totally innocent of any crime. But soon Yosef, the only one who can interpret Pharaoh's dreams, is elevated to a position of unprecedented power. Yosef was alienated from his brothers on account of his own dreams, and he was elevated above his brothers, and ultimately above the entire world, through Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh has two dreams. In the first, 7 beautiful, fat, and healthy cows emerged from the river, grazing in the marshland. Their appearance was followed by 7 lean cows of unhealthy appearance. The lean ones devoured the fat ones, but remained lean. In the second dream, 7 full, robust ears of grain rise up on one stalk, followed by 7 thin and emaciated ones, scorched by the east wind. As in the first dream, the emaciated ears devour the 7 healthy and full ones. In the morning, Pharaoh was agitated. None of his advisors, the sorcerers and wise men of Egypt, are able to interpret his dreams. Just then, the chief cupbearer recalls Yosef, speaking of him in a degrading and unappreciative manner, a Hebrew youth, a slave, who correctly interpreted his dream and that of the chief butcher 2 years prior to this. Pharaoh immediately sends for Yosef. Yosef is released from jail and finds himself standing before the king of Egypt. Yosef explains to Pharaoh that it's not him, but God who will provide the interpretation. And then immediately he interprets the dream. He says, the land of Egypt is soon going to experience 7 years of great plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. A famine so severe that the years of plenty will be totally forgotten. And then Yosef offers unsolicited advice. He says a home front command must be established, a system of preparation overseen by one man, who shall in turn appoint overseers. It must be put in place during the years of plenty. Grain should be gathered during the years of plenty as a reserve to be used during the years of famine. The Pharaoh is very impressed with Yosef, and he appoints him as his second in command. Yosef is dressed in royal garments and given absolute command over the land of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. Events transpire exactly as Yosef foresaw. The 7 years of plenty arrive, during which time Yosef gathers all the grain together, and afterwards the heavy famine arrives. Meantime, during those years of plenty, Yosef marries Asnat, the adopted daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On, who is actually none other than his cousin, the daughter of Dinah, who was born of Dinah's rape by Chaim. Yosef and Asnat have 2 children, Menashe and Ephraim. According to tradition, it was on Rosh Hashanah that Yosef was freed from prison and given the royal commission. And as soon as he was freed, the land of Egypt began to flow with blessing. The grain itself was blessed. Yosef, with great wisdom and compassion, humility and understanding, built storehouses in every city and filled them with every type of grain and produce. And he sent out word to all of Egypt by order of Pharaoh, declaring, "Prepare yourselves for the upcoming years of famine." He gathered so much that it could no longer be counted. And when the 7 years of famine commenced as Yosef had foreseen, the famine descended immediately, suddenly, in one fell swoop. And Midrash provides the staggering details. While the Egyptians were still at the table, the bread on their tables rotted before their eyes, the flour wormed, and all the grain that was privately stored rotted. Only the grain that Yosef himself had saved remained edible. If an Egyptian citizen himself tried to store food, it would only rot away. Their licentious nature caused rot. Open up your heart. It was Joseph's purity and righteousness that preserved all of Egypt's provisions. And on account of his purity, he was able to sustain the entire population and ultimately that of the world. No wonder, as we learned last week, it's Yosef who is alluded to in Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 25 as the righteous who is the pillar of the world. Yosef gathered inestimable amounts of provisions. The famine reaches epic proportions, and all of Egypt came to Yosef to buy provisions. The famine spreads all over the earth, reaching the land of Canaan as well. In the second year of the famine, Yaakov sends Yosef's brothers to Egypt to buy food. They come before Yosef and bow down to him, just as he saw in his boyhood dream. He recognizes them, but they do not recognize him. And through this unique position, Yosef puts a complex plan into motion. His actions, while clearly carefully considered, seemed so strange, speaking with them so harshly and accusing them of espionage, returning their money not once but twice, the placement of his silver goblet in Benjamin's sack and the imprisonment of Shimon. What was the purpose of his elaborate design? What did he really seek to achieve? Like his father Yaakov, with whom he shared remarkable similarities, God had shown Yosef his spiritual path in his dreams. Our sages teach that Yosef had divine inspiration from the time he was a young boy until the day he died. He knew that his dreams were special, that they actually defined his life because they were prophecy. He was no headstrong, foolish youth just telling his brothers that he will reign over them and that they'll bow down to him to make them jealous. Yosef told his brothers his dreams in total innocence and in total righteousness because he knew that he had been chosen to end the tension between the children of Leah and the children of Rachel. He knew that it was critical for them to become a unified nation in Egypt. All his actions, all this bizarre behavior, it was all to determine if the hatred and jealousy between the children of Leah and the children of Rachel has ended. Will the brothers pass judgment against Benjamin and condemn him as they did with Yosef? Or have they learned that they must be dedicated to each other and willing to make a self-sacrifice for each other? So open up your heart. There are actually many connections between our portion of Miketz and Chanukah. But perhaps one of the most basic ideas is the connection between Yosef successfully maintaining his Jewish identity in the midst of Egypt, remaining pure, and our forefathers' struggle to maintain and to fight for the survival of their Torah way of life in the face of the onslaught of the Greek oppression. Regarding Pharaoh's dreams, our portion states, "And it came to pass in the morning, his spirit was agitated. So he sent and summoned all the necromancers of Egypt and all its wise men. Pharaoh related his dream to them, but none could interpret them for Pharaoh." Rashi explains on these words that actually there were plenty of interpreters and interpretations, but not for Pharaoh. Quoting a well-known teaching of our sages, Rashi states simply that their voices didn't even enter into his ears, and he could get no satisfaction from their interpretations. He wouldn't accept what they were saying, because they were saying something weird. They were saying something strange. They were saying that the dream means you'll give birth to 7 daughters, and then you'll bury 7 daughters. What does that even mean? The entire council of all of Egypt's magicians and sages couldn't put Pharaoh's mind at ease. Hashem was saving Yosef for him. Hashem wanted him to hear what Yosef had to say. But open up your heart in the deepest way, because there is a great secret in the Egyptians' misinterpretation. The Egyptian outlook was very narrow, and their interpretation was so obviously flawed that the words wouldn't even enter Pharaoh's ears. But what is this all about? The Egyptian mindset was deterministic. The worldview held by Pharaoh's Egypt couldn't entertain the possibility of a reality wherein thin cows could devour fat and strong cows, nor was the Egyptian mindset capable of comprehending the dream of the ears of grain, because the Egyptians, like the Greeks who worshipped the physical and the external, could not consider the possibility of a reality wherein the weak could best the strong, the few could be victorious over the mighty. In their emphasis on external strength and control, it was not possible for a little bit of oil to last for 8 days, just as Egyptian culture was unable to interpret dreams of the power and quality of inner strength of Hashem's control. Pharaoh's magicians could not have possibly understood his dream. The world of the Egyptians, like the mythological pantheon of Greek gods, was a world fought over by conflicting powers, powers of light versus powers of darkness, benevolent gods versus malevolent gods. This is a world of divided reality, what Torah refers to as a world of separation. In that bleak world, man is a pawn, and perhaps the prize, in a game being waged by vying powers. Thus, you'll give birth to 7 daughters, and you'll bury 7 daughters. The kind gods will bless you with 7 daughters, but the vicious gods will kill them. In this deterministic vortex, man is a victim of fate, caught in the middle of a struggle between opposing forces, and he has no opportunity to be a partner in creation, let alone to aid in fixing it. There's no meaning, no direction, no divine providence, just as endless eternal battles between forces of good and forces of darkness. This is the common thread between the Egyptian culture and the Greek, between Yosef in Egypt and the story of Chanukah. neither believe that Hashem runs the world and that all this is brought about by him exclusively and as a part of his plan, as beautifully stated by the prophet Isaiah in chapter 45, verses 6 and 7, in order that they know from the shining of the sun and from the west that there is no one besides me. I am Hashem and there is no other, who forms light and creates darkness, who makes peace and creates evil. I am Hashem, who makes all these. Open up your heart. In the deepest way ever in your life, Israel's mission, as manifest by Yosef's life story and as celebrated on Chanukah, is to reflect the unity of Hashem. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, Hashem who is our God is Hashem who is one. There is nothing else. In this world, both the good and the bad are manifestations of God's orchestration. But the magicians who live in that world of separation, and all those who feel themselves constantly to be victims caught in a struggle between opposing forces, who believe that fate is cruel and all one can do is run away from it, they could not possibly correctly interpret Pharaoh's dream. Only Joseph, who acknowledges, who believes and sees Hashem's hand in everything, and who understands that even the troubles that have come upon him are part of divine providence, and who understands that we were placed in this world in order to be given an opportunity to actively participate in tikkun, in fixing the world, he understands. What does he say? That Pharaoh's dreams are one, not two dreams. Bad and good, fat cows and lean cows, all are from Hashem. And because Yosef, like his father Yaakov, is a fixer, now all of a sudden we can understand another mystery. Why did Yosef offer unsolicited advice as to what should be done? Chutzpah? He was asked for an interpretation of the dream and nothing more, yet immediately he moved swiftly and seamlessly to the solution to Pharaoh's problem. Because Yosef is the opposite of everything Egypt represents. To him is given the secret of interpretation of the meaning of the human condition, because the knowledge that Hashem, our God, is Hashem who is one, is the answer to Pharaoh's dreams. And that knowledge also took Yosef to the next stage, the stage of action. And it was that same knowledge that powered the Chashmonaim, the priests, to victory over the forces of mighty Greece. The Greeks tried to convince Israel that belief in the one God is an illusion, that only the physical and demonstrable and the material is true. Hashem is our God, Hashem is one, tells us that only Hashem is reality and all else is illusion. That is what both Yosef and the light of Chanukah teach us as they converge this week in Parashat Miketz. Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach. Shabbat Shalom and Chanukah Sameach. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for being part of the Jerusalem Lights community. Have a wonderful Shabbat and a wonderful light-filled Chanukah.